Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the different tools in Photoshop that you'll be using to create vector images for Project 3. Remember, vector images are created by defining points and curves on your canvas. They're not pixel-based or raster images, meaning you can scale these vector images up to large sizes and they'll still remain crisp and sharp no matter the size. These vector shapes are created using text and shapes that have points and lines. And you can actually create these custom shapes with this new tool that we're going to talk about today, which is the pen tool. So as you can see here on the screen, I kind of have a glimpse of all these different tools. You guys should be familiar with your text tool, your shapes, your rectangle, your rounded rectangle, the ellipse, the polygon, the line, and the custom shape tool. So all of these in this line you should be familiar with. Now down here we're going to talk about all of these new tools that are actually all under your pen tool, which is this one right here, and you can find it. Mine's actually set for the delete, so I'm going to set it back to anchor pen tool. But if you click and hold, you'll see you get this whole drop-down menu and you'll see all of these icons, which we're going to talk about today. Obviously, you still have your move tool, which is all the way up here at the top with the shortcut of V on your keyboard. But now we're going to start talking about these selection tools, which is path. And if you click and hold it, you get the direct selection tool. So we're going to talk about all of those different things today and all of those tools that are kind of within those tools on your toolbar. The pen tool is pretty much going to be your best friend for this project. So it's really important to get very familiar with it. In web courses, you will see that I have a link to the Bezier game. This game helps you master the pen tool. Sometimes it's good to kind of get on here and get used to the pen tool before kind of getting deep into your projects. So they have all these different stages that show you how to make points and curves. To make the curves, you actually click, and while holding down on that point, you drag and you get these handles. Then as you go to the next one, you can create another. Click and drag as you make these anchor points. Again, this is a fantastic game to let you practice your pen tool outside of Photoshop. It's the bezier.method.ac. You can also find the link in web courses. So back over to Photoshop, let's actually use this pen tool and talk about how these points, anchor points, and handles, and all these different tools within the pen tool. Keep in mind, the pen tool here is really great for straight and curved lines with great precision, creating these points and lines. It's kind of really just your basic pen tool, kind of creating like what we talked about in the lecture, the connect the dots. The next tool you have here is actually your freeform pen tool. This is a great tool if you have like a tablet or you're really comfortable with drawing with your mouse or touchpad. The freeform pen tool lets you draw as if you were like using a pen on paper. And it still, as you draw, creates those points and lines so you can actually come back in and manipulate those anchor points and curvatures using your direct selection tools. The next two to talk about is the add an anchor point and the subtract an anchor point. So my kind of rule of thumb here is less is more when it comes to creating vector images with these points. Less points, the easier it is to manage. So sometimes you might need to come in and take away a point, which would have the subtraction. So that removes an anchor point. And obviously, kind of vice versa, the plus adds a point. Now, what if you need a curve where you have a straight line? That's where this convert point tool comes in. It converts a straight to a curve and a curve to a straight. and I'll be demonstrating that in just a moment. So let's get started. I'm going to do File, New, and I'm just going to use a basic 1000 by 1000 pixel, 300 pixel per inch resolution square for this demonstration today. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight for the pen tool. When you select the pen tool, always make sure that it's set to shape, not path or pixels. When it's set to shape, you can set your fill and your stroke here. I usually like to turn off the fill and set the stroke to something bright where I can see it, and then set the weight of the stroke to something not too high but not too low. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create some straight lines using the pen tool, and I'm just clicking kind of all over. And then if I come all the way back to this main point, you'll actually see it turns into a little circle to let you know it's going to create a closed shape. So with that selected, I now have a closed shape, and I can come up to the fill and fill it with different color, gradients, and it acts pretty much just like a shape that you create using the different shape tools. You just now have a custom shape that you created using the pen tool and creating the points. And let's say you wanted to have curvatures in this design. You go over to the pen tool, you click and hold, and you have a convert point tool right here at the bottom. With that selected, you now can go to these points, and you can actually see the cursor change when I get to the point. All you would do is click and drag, and now you get these handles to try to start creating curvatures. Sometimes if it overlaps, you can kind of get this funky look. Now, if you wanted to actually bring that curvature down so you don't have this crossover, what you would do is you'd come over here to your path selection or your direct selection. Path selection is going to be the black cursor. If you click and hold, the direct selection is going to be the white. The direct selection lets you actually grab these independent points, these independent anchor points. So now I can select that point. You see that all the other ones turned white and this one turned blue. Now I can actually just manipulate these handles and this point. I can actually move these points around. But let's say I have too many points here. I can actually come back to where my pen tool is, which is now set to the convert point tool. Click and hold, delete anchor point tool. I can just start deleting points, and it just would connect the two that were on either side of the point that you deleted. And vice versa, you can come back in with the add an anchor point tool and add points if necessary. Now I'm going to delete this layer, and we're going to talk about creating curvatures as you go. Now, doing the Bezier method game online with that link will help you kind of practice creating these curvatures. But to pretty much create them as you go, you click and drag, and then when you go to make your second point, you can click and drag again and start creating curvatures. If you just start clicking, you'll start getting straight lines again, and then click and you get a curve. You get shapes, enclosed shapes when you click the very first point again, and now you can set fills. So that's a really quick how to use that pen tool, the curvature, convert point tool, anchor points with the handles to control curves. So now I'm actually going to do a quick demo on the freeform pen tool. Remember, this one is like drawing with pen on paper. So if I just start drawing and then I release, I now have all of those points and it auto generated where the anchors and the curvatures need to be. I now can come over to my direct selection tools and manipulate off of what I just created. So to kind of go back to these tools that you guys are familiar with, talking about the rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, and polygon, I'm going to go straight for the ellipse tool. I'm going to create a circle right here. Now, do you see it also has anchor points? So you can actually come over to your direct selection tool and move the anchor points on already existing shapes. So if you need a circle, but if you're wanting to kind of like create a Pac-Man kind of look, you don't have to create your own circle with the pen tool. Feel free to just go straight for the circle and then modify it as needed. This goes for all shapes, and it actually also goes for text. To do that, you would just go to your horizontal type tool. I'm going to type DIG 2109. Go to my move tool and get it centered back here on the screen. So now I have my layer selected with the type. I'm going to go up to my top of my Photoshop and go to type, convert to shape. Now it doesn't look like it did anything, but if you look over here now, it's not a text layer, it's a shape layer. If I come over here to my direct selection tools, you'll now see I have all of these handles and points that I can start manipulating and kind of making almost like a custom font. Another great thing that you can do once you've created these shapes, you can actually come over here and instead of the direct, do the path selection tool, and you can select and move independent letters. You can actually select an independent letter and then go to Edit, Transform Path, Flip Horizontal, Edit, Transform Path, Rotate 90. So you can actually manipulate this text as shape using your different selection tools here, your path and direct selection tool. So that is one thing to keep in mind as you're working to create your vector posters. Don't forget to make sure that even when you're working with the shapes here, your different shape tools, that they are set to shape and not pixel, path, or any of that. Just make sure they are set to shape. So that was a quick demo on the different tools that you can use to create vector graphics in Photoshop. And I will see you next video.